Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Nivalipur College and Yoga Meditation Physiotherapy Subcommittee of IQAC, I extend a very warm welcome to everybody present. Today, we have assembled here for a very special webinar on the nationalism of Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo deconstructing the left ideologue. 15th August is when we celebrate India's independence and simultaneously celebrate Sri Aurobindo's birthday. Sri Aurobindo, a philosopher, a yogi, a guru, a poet, and a nationalist, joined the Indian movement for independence from British rule. He was one of its influential leaders and then became a spiritual reformer, introducing his visions on human progress and spiritual evolution. Aurobindo provided an element of spiritualism to nationalism. In 1908, he said in a public meeting in Mumbai, nationalism is not a mere political program. Nationalism is a religion that has come from God. Nationalism is a creed which you shall have to live. His was an evolutionary nationalism. His visions was like that of a searchlight, turning its revealing light from one realm to another that helps enlighten us with the worlds of being unknown to the ordinary gaze, their workings and their influences upon earth and man, and the part they play in the evolution from the inconscient to the superconscient. Now, today's webinar is so much important because it's very relevant in today's time. I would request our principal sir, Dr. Joydev Sharangi, to deliver the welcome address to begin this webinar.
Good evening to all. It's an opportunity, or I say it's a golden opportunity to hear Dr. Professor Gautam Ghoshal, who is a renowned scholar and a dedicated person to Aurobindo and his philosophy. It's a long time since we have been trying to catch hold of Gautamda and listen to his thoughts on this. Thank you, Gautamda, for agreeing to our call, and thank you for your time for us. Welcome, Gautamda. It's an honor that we have two principals today, Dr. Ramakrishna Chakraborty of K.K. Das College and Professor Dr. Tilak Chatterjee of Bankim Sardar College. Thank you for your generosity and help. Thank you, Tilakda, and thank you, Ramakrishna Babu, for continuous support for enlightening discourse about the academia in Kolkata. Aurobindo is always someone who is very difficult to penetrate. 1861, the birth of Tagore. 1863, the birth of Vivekananda. 1872, Sri Aurobindo. So 1860s and early 70s, 1870s, was the first light of Indian spiritual renaissance, I will call. And Aurobindo's contribution is enormous, immeasurable. His conception of divine union, the spiritual evolution in man, are the examples of how perfect life can be lived. He was a man of so different from common run of humanity. And I won't go further because we have an expert with us who is a dedicated scholar on Aurobindo. and whose name is synonymous with Aurobindo scholarship. So I welcome all of you. I welcome everyone present for this webinar. I hope it will be a very fruitful and enlightening session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request our guest of honor, Dr. Tilok Chatterjee, Principal of Bankim Shadar College, to say a few words.
Good evening, Shubho Sandhya. At the very outset, I convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Joydeep, which I say in a formal way, Dr. Joydeep, but informally, who is my younger brother, Principal New Alipur College. I thank him for inviting me to this webinar as the guest of honor. Ever since the closure of the institutes of higher education throughout the country, all stakeholders, whether they are the teachers, the students, or their parents, we are all plunged into the deep darkness of a tunnel where we are not seeing any light, any ray of light that would encourage us to feel for a better morning tomorrow. সত্যি আমরা এক নিদারুণ কঠিন সময়ের সাক্ষী থাকছি, জানি না আরো কতদিন থাকতে হবে। It is true that the webinars as organized throughout all colleges do not bring the much needed satisfaction of relief as expected from a dose of vaccine. But definitely the webinars help us to think, to learn, and to grow intellectually on different areas of knowledge and meta-knowledge. I convey my best wishes to the IQSE for organizing this particular webinar on a subject which may not be very popular, but definitely an essential one, as I firmly believe that this webinar would induce many of the serious thinkers to get into the land of unexplored unknowns as drawn by Sri Aurobindo. And I'm sure that the deliberation of Professor Gautam Ghoshal, who is second to none in this domain, would satisfy the audience. And the interaction at the end is expected to enlighten both the speaker and the listener. Before I pass on the microphone to the organizers to speak on the theme of this webinar and also the speaker, I take this opportunity to say a warm hello to Gautam Da. Gautam Da, can you listen to me?
Yes, I can listen to you. Nice to see you.
It's a warm hello to you after quite a large number of days. Gautam Da is known to me from the late 80s when I was a postgraduate student in Shantiniketan. Myself being a student of economics, I was not his direct student, but I distinctly remember the students or the friends of DOMEL, the Department of English in Vishwabharati, as they used to say that Gautam Da has deconstructed the notion of a teacher. He has brought both the students, both the learners, and the teaching outside the classroom. I learned from them that the age-old idea of a teacher is no more true for Gautam Da. How Gigi, as we used to call him, made literature look like down to life with his incredible connections of romantic poems of the Victorian age with the songs of Mukesh and Rafi. Many of you may not know that Gigi is a prolific singer and a very good cricketer too. When Joydeep requested me to be the guest of honor, I could not say no to my young brother. But at the same time, I was haunted by the idea that after so many days I'll meet Gautam Da. Whatever little things I know about Gautam Da, about Aurobindo, is because of Gautam Da. He used to make us learn about the philosophy of of Sri Aurobindo in a story-like manner. And I found that the IQAC coordinators and the principal of New Alipur College has approached the right person at the right time who can make this webinar very much successful. Welcome, Gautam Da. I wish that we'll meet again, not only in webinars, but in seminars too. And I invite you to my college as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Lovely. We wanted to hear all these things, not only about on this topic, but about our speaker, Dr. Gautam Ghosh. Lovely speech, sir. Thank you so much. Now I would request another principal, as our principal told, Professor Ramkrishna Chakraborty, principal of KK Das College, to say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me in this webinar. Thanks to the team, New Alipur College, especially IQAC, Jaydeep Sarangi, and Divesh Beda, and the team of New Alipur College for organizing such a beautiful thematic discussion. And we are here for hearing from Professor Kushal. So let the microphone be on his end and wait for the successful completion of the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Really, thank you. Now, we are really missing our Vice Principal, Sir Divesh Beda, because he is the man behind this thing. But since he is now in a remote place and cannot connect, and so we are sorry to say, because we wanted to hear a lot from him.
I think Divesh Beda is here.
Divesh sir, are you here? No, I think
he is not here. That is Govinda Babu is using his.
Thank you, sir.
This is G Suite account on behalf of Divesh Babu. I am conducting this webinar actually.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. I request our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Shamabrata Das, to say a few words. Sir.
Good evening to one and all. On behalf of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of New Alipur College, I welcome you all in today's program. I would like to offer my sincere thanks to the college administration, Principal Sir, Vice Principal Sir, for their relentless support and motivation behind our each and every endeavor. Thanks to Professor Govindalal Mandal, Dr. Bipottaran Paramanik, and other members of the Yoga, Meditation, and Physiotherapy Subcommittee for organizing this program, which is very pertinent in today's perspective. I would like to offer my sincere gratitude to the guest of honor of today's program, Dr. Tilak Chatterjee, Principal, Bankim Sardar College. Thanks to Dr. Ramkrishna Chakraborty, Principal, KK Das College. We are privileged to have with us Dr. Gautam Ghoshal, Professor, Department of English, Vishwabharati University. We are eagerly waiting for his speech. Now a few words about today's program. Aurobindo Ghosh is one of the great scholars of his time. Furthermore, he was a guru and spiritualist. That apart, he was a multilingual person who can speak French, Bengali, English, Sanskrit, etc. splendidly. He participated in the Indian independence movement against British rule and became an influential leader. He worked actively towards uniting the people for the national movement of freedom against the oppressive British government. Later, he became a spiritual reformer. In Pondicherry, he founded a community of spiritual seekers which took shape as the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in 1926. Once he said, "Our actual enemy is not any force exterior to ourselves, but our own crying weaknesses, our cowardice, our selfishness, our hypocrisy, our purblind sentimentalism." He also said, "Peace is the first condition without which nothing else can be stable." To sum up, he was a great personality who, with the help of his writing and speeches, influenced the people of the country for freedom. Later on, he took retirement from politics and became a spiritual leader and guru. Thank you. Over to you, Aditi Madam.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening speech. Okay, now coming to the main program. Our speaker, Dr. Gautam Ghoshal, needs no introduction. Dr. Gautam Ghoshal is Professor, Department of English, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. Dr. Ghoshal has specialized in all the aspects of Sri Aurobindo, 19th century British and American literature, Tagore's poetry, drama, Rabindra Sangeet, and non-fiction, and Shakespeare's poetry and characters. Apart from a dozen of books to his credit, he writes poetry in English. He has lectured in India and abroad on various aspects of Sri Aurobindo. He has been the recipient of Nalinikanto Gupta Award for 2009 Kolkata, winner of Pratibha Patil Poetry Competition 2009 Amravati, to name a few. An eminent personality truly in his own right. Now I request our speaker for this webinar, Dr. Gautam Ghoshal, to enlighten us.
Good evening to all. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So, many thanks to Joydeep and all the organizers of the college. In fact, I was looking for an opportunity to speak on this topic because it is one of the most misinterpreted aspects of Sri Aurobindo. And in fact, most of the left historians have dominated the last 50-60 years in India. And they were not quite kind to Sri Aurobindo. They have either summarily left him or made a division that Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo are two different people. One was in politics and one left politics and became a recluse. Now, this is the popular conception about Sri Aurobindo. Now, my lecture will be divided into three parts. I will start from Sri Aurobindo, then come back to Aurobindo Ghosh of Kolkata. Then I will once again go back to Sri Aurobindo of Pondicherry. So let me start with what Sri Aurobindo is. Sri Aurobindo's major works were serialized between 1914 and 1921. And what he did is very striking. He liberated the Gita from the hands of the Orthodox Hindus. He liberated the Veda in his book, The Secret of the Veda, from the Orthodox Hindus. And he had a new conception of human unity, which he recorded in his book, The Ideal of Human Unity. In all, if I give you the list of his prose publications during this period, which includes politics also and sociology, a totally misconception about Sri Aurobindo that he left politics after 1910. So he wrote The Secret of the Veda, essays on the Gita, the synthesis of yoga, the human cycle, which is about the evolution of human societies, the life divine about the evolution, spiritual evolution of man. Man is not final, is a transitional creature. Bioscience won't be satisfied with an imperfect model, and man is bound for a new species. And then war and self-determination, where he speaks of the end of war, how war can be ended. And there, of course, he speaks a lot on feminism, on patriarchy. In fact, here is God's Plenty in between 1914 and 1921. And he was suggesting a yoga, which he called integral yoga, or the yoga of transformation. The yoga of transformation. Just a minute. And there was some disturbance. So this yoga is actually the transformation of the human being, and it will initiate a passage from man to the next species. Because man is at present the most superior, he believes that man is final. No, because nature won't be satisfied with an imperfect model. So man will initiate that leap from man to a new species, a new creation. And he speaks of this along with his politics of resistance on various levels. Like in the foundations of Indian culture, he anticipated 60 years before Edward Said's Orientalism. Much before Edward Said, Sri Aurobindo had said the East is a Western construct. And he defended Indian culture along with Persian culture, not excluding them, because he favored the Mughal period more than the British period. So this is his work for humanity. And to do Sri Aurobindo's yoga, he specifically says that you don't have to change your religion, because the age of religion is over. And it differentiates in the human cycle between religionism and religion. Real religion is spirituality. That is the essence of religion. And there every religion is united. At the same time, he says, and this is striking, contrary to the other historians who think that this Aryan civilization was 3005 years old. In the Ishopanishad, Sri Aurobindo claims that this civilization could be more than 10,000 years old. And you must have noticed the digging up of new civilizations, 8,900, 9,000 years old very recently. So he saw it much before. And the advent of mass society in 1980, he had anticipated that in the human cycle. So he liberated Essays on the Gita, the Life Divine, the synthesis of yoga from the clutches of Orthodox Hindus, that these texts do not belong to the Hindus or so-called Hindus. Because who is the audience? In the secret of the Veda, he indicates who is the audience. There is no reference to Hindu. Even in Pondicherry, he does not refer much to the phrase Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma is not Dharma. It has been hijacked by certain political parties. Even Uttarpada's speech of the Kolkata period was hijacked by certain political parties. And it's totally misinterpreted because Sanatan Dharma is not Dharma at all. It is a way of life, it is a prescription of life, it is a way of transforming human consciousness. And there, the Japanese, the Chinese, which is the most difficult to transform, as the mother has said, the Chinese. But it aims to entirely transform human consciousness. And if 10% changes, then there is a possibility for a better society, a better global society. Now let's come back to Kolkata and Baroda. Sri Aurobindo returned from England to India in 1893. And in 1894, Bankim Chandra died. He greeted Bankim Chandra with 7 cultural essays. And that was the first post-colonial resistance from Sri Aurobindo, when he claimed that it is an insult to Bankim Chandra Chatterjee when you call him the Scot of Bengal. It's a terrible insult to Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, an original Bengali novelist, as a mere replica of an imperfect Scotch author. He said Bankim is far superior in characterization, in penetrating into the psychology of women, and almost in all things except for the power of narration, where he says Scott is slightly ahead than Bankim. So this is the first resistance. Then he tried to renationalize himself. He was already a master of Greek, Latin, Italian, French, and he knew a little of German. He started learning Sanskrit and other Indian languages. And he started writing on Vyasa, Valmiki, and Kalidasa. And the idea is to show the world that India has a rich treasure, and Valmiki and Vyasa are as good as Homer, Shakespeare, Dante, Sophocles. So in Baroda, he wrote a lot on the Indian scriptures. And once again, even in Baroda, it is a resistance to what Frantz Fanon later called in his 1961 text, Wretched of the Earth. Fanon used the word colonization of the psyche. Sri Aurobindo used it in 1907, and even before that he was hinting at it. Echoing Vivekananda, we as a nation have lost our individuality. We as a nation have lost our individuality. The Swami was almost crying. Unfortunately, he didn't live long. He was sick, his health failed, and he died a premature death. And Sri Aurobindo came to Kolkata in 1906 and he plunged into the national movement, became the editor of Bonde Mataram. And between 1906 and 1908, it was, this area is called extremism, terrorism by most of the left historians. And it is called Hindu nationalism, which is again a term which is highly debatable. Because Sri Aurobindo tried his absolute best. Today, Muslims are more enlightened than before, than 1907. But in 1905, 6, 7, it was very difficult to convince them. Sri Aurobindo insisted on that. Please try to change your mentality. And Bonde Mataram used to be published from Lahore in Urdu. And you'll be surprised to know that leading Muslim scholars like Arif Muhammad Khan, who translated the Bonde Mataram and appreciated it, Firoz Vakht Ahmed praised its melody and patriotism. Rafi Ahmed Kidwai, who was a minister in Nehru's cabinet, he was highly appreciative of Vande Mataram. Later, Rabindranath objected to certain lines from it, and he preferred Jano Gano to Subhash Chandra Bose. But it was there, and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was very fond of it. So it was mainly because of this divide and rule policy, and also Khilafat movement, which Gandhiji patronized. Sri Aurobindo repeatedly cautioned Gandhiji, don't do it, don't patronize Khilafat movement. But that flared up the communal tension more and more in India. But Sri Aurobindo never said you should go out. And Sri Aurobindo, more than Rabindranath and Vivekananda, except for Ramakrishna, because Ramakrishna used to do namaz in the absence of Maulavi. He did for quite some time. He substituted for the Maulavi. He did namaz. So after Ramakrishna, he was the first to appreciate Islam, Quran, and Hazrat Muhammad, specifically claiming for Hazrat Muhammad the title Jogi Shrestho in Gitar Bhumika, his Bengali book. So it was not a proper estimate which the leftists did. Like in the calling of history, Dipesh Chakraborty is very slyly denigrating Jadunath Sarkar because he gave us a true picture of Mughal history. And then Partha Chatterjee is silent, almost silent, and very brief whenever they come to Sri Aurobindo. Only Ashish Nandi has given us a 12-page narrative in The Intimate Enemy. And you can't imagine, we can't write a satire on Ramakrishna or Rabindranath Tagore. But Ashish Nandi did that. He wrote a satirical portrait of Sri Aurobindo in The Intimate Enemy. Well, they are majority and we are minorities. We can't defend that. Sachidananda Mohanty protested against it many times. But we couldn't do because it's a very heavy bulk of left historians who claim that Sri Aurobindo was a terrorist, an extremist, and his nationalism, because it is, they call it religious nationalism. I call it spiritual nationalism. And he called the Muslims, when they refused to come, Sri Aurobindo said, let us go together. I don't think there is a great fault in calling the country mother. Sugato Bose has, in his book, The Nation as Mother, and other essays, He has defended the concept of mother, the country as mother. And elsewhere also, Sugata Bose has defended, because he had to, because he was defending Subhash Chandra Bose, his grandfather. Now, this misinterpretation of Sri Aurobindo as, and I think the level Hindu monk tagged to Vivekananda was also a fault. Vivekananda himself was responsible for that. Because this Hindu is a very controversial term these days. So in the light of the present, if you go back to Sri Aurobindo and say that Sri Aurobindo was a Hindu terrorist, nationalist, extremist, and Sumit Sarkar has said a very interesting thing. He has said that it is virtually, it's a decorative vocabulary. There's a call in between from my head. So he called it, Sumit Sarkar called it, for all of them called it elitism. And it did not include the Muslims, it did not include the subalterns. If it did not include the Muslims and the subalterns, then Mayer Deya Mota Kapod, Mota Chal, how come these metaphors propped up? So Sumit Sarkar said it was verbal and literary violence. And he goes on to say that Sri Aurobindo made an honorable retreat to Pondicherry because it was a failure. The entire elitist movement was a failure. Now this has to be repaired. And the first thing to do is to revive R.C. Mojumdar and Jadunath Sarkar. Because he is a very big brand of left historians. So we have to revive first Jadunath Sarkar and R.C. Mojumdar to know what it was exactly. So it was verbal and literary violence that Sri Aurobindo did, Aurobindo Ghosh did, and it was an honorable retreat to Pondicherry. Now this is, in general, the brief, sly attack on Sri Aurobindo. And I found Ashish Nandi extremely disturbing. His language is quite offensive in Intimate Enemy. So it is not true that the subaltern and the Muslims were not included. And Sri Aurobindo was so fond, the Muslims were so fond of Sri Aurobindo that even when he went to Pondicherry, the best of the singers, vocalists and instrumentalists, they begged for his audience. Baba Alauddin Khan played for Sri Aurobindo for 4 hours, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. And Abdul Karim Khan was going to sing for Sri Aurobindo on the way he died. This indicates that he was meaning a different kind of nationalism, which is not only spiritualism, but which leads to human unity. In Kolkata, there was a situational necessity. So, because my student has been working on it, I have not written anything on it. She has submitted her PhD recently and she has done very well. So I speak, but I don't write anything on this. Let her write. The point is, it is a totally distorted history of Sri Aurobindo which we get from these historians. And the reason is clear. They are Marxist historians, and Marxism won't accept anything that stresses on the individual, that stresses on individual sacrifice. In Vande Mataram and Karma Yogin, Sri Aurobindo was insisting on sacrifice of the individual. There was a situational necessity. There are stages of nationalism, and that stage required sacrifice. Sri Aurobindo said in the initial essay on the, not the initial essay, in an essay in the Karma Yogin, he said, a man capable of sacrifice has left the animal behind him. A man capable of sacrifice has left the animal behind him. So this was a stage when Sri Aurobindo's language was also, to me, because I have worked on Sri Aurobindo stylistics and I have been in it for over 40 years. I have noticed that the language of Aurobindo Ghosh and the language of Sri Aurobindo are different, because from 1910-11 onwards his language changed. And Sri Aurobindo also spoke against ordinary reason, ordinary intellect. Now there are two kinds of reason. One is ordinary reason, the other is higher reason. This higher reason is related to intellect, to intuition. Even if we don't get to intuition, if you have higher reason, you can see what Sri Aurobindo or Aurobindo Ghosh is trying to mean. What I see is that there is a drastic change in Sri Aurobindo's language, Aurobindo Ghosh's language and Sri Aurobindo's language. The ideas do not change much. It is almost same, evolving a bit through yoga, but the language is evolving. That is the most important thing. So the nation as mother, it could have been accepted, and it can be accepted even today. We have a distorted variety of Hinduism, I know, I understand. But the nation of as a mother is, it includes everybody, because Sri Aurobindo defended the Persian architecture, calling them Indo-Persian architecture, and he defended them against the English attack on them, that they are sensuous. Sri Aurobindo said, no, Taj Mahal is not sensuous, it is spiritual. Fatehpur Sikri is not sensuous, it is spiritual. Buddhist paints are spiritual. And in Pondicherry, Sri Aurobindo retains his politics of resistance in many ways. Through all the texts, he was defending Indian culture. In an essay entitled Hindu Drama, he compares Elizabethan drama with Hindu drama, and plenty of Englishmen have attacked Kalidas's drama as no place, they are nothing. Sri Aurobindo said, why? They said, where is there the violence of an Othello, a Duchess of Malfi, in Macbeth? Where is the violence there? And Sri Aurobindo says that the average Hindu mind of the Middle Ages was non-violent. And so Kalidas's drama has no violence, it is a different kind of aesthetics. So an Indian play cannot imagine the violence of a Duchess of Malfi or Othello. As Matthew Arnold once said in an essay on the modern elements in literature, that the age of Pericles is far superior in culture than the Elizabethan age in England. Why? because there was no bloodshed in the 6th century BC Athens. The Pericles of Athens had no bloodshed. That is a sign of culture. Only Shakespeare saves the Elizabethan age. So culturally, the age is different. The aesthetics should be different. Indian aesthetics is different. Elizabethan aesthetics is different. There was nobody as educated as Sri Aurobindo to defend this. People speak of K.C. Bhattacharya these days, but he has written very slight. And there is a lot of inflated discussions on K.C. Bhattacharya. He is good, but you will notice he has no examples. K.C. Bhattacharya is good, but you can't replace Manmohan Ghosh as a poet with Sri Aurobindo or K.C. Bhattacharya as a prose writer with Sri Aurobindo. This is to camouflage Sri Aurobindo, one of the greatest minds, one of the two great makers of modern Indian tradition. The other is Rabindranath Tagore. And he was twice nominated for the Nobel Prize, for 1943 for literature, in 1950 for world peace. So such a man was camouflaged. In Jadavpur, in the syllabus, they introduced Manmohan Ghosh, not Sri Aurobindo. Manmohan Ghosh is a third-rated poet. He may be Sri Aurobindo's brother. I shouldn't say this. But Manmohan Ghosh instead of Sri Aurobindo is ridiculous. So even when Sri Aurobindo progresses, many people started asking Sri Aurobindo, you must be a great philosopher. And they started calling him a philosopher. Sri Aurobindo said, no, I'm not a philosopher. I'm primarily a poet and a politician. Imagine this is the point of departure I'm making from traditional criticism. And throughout his life, till the last day of his life, he was in politics, active politics, withdrawn, but extremely active. Well, his technique may be different. And to understand that technique, you have to lift yourself a bit from the ordinary consciousness to at least to the higher reason. Even if we can't go to intuition, we can raise at least from Pope's rationality to something higher, a better rationality. So, Sri Aurobindo continued politics of resistance, and he did not like this European dominance. And you will be surprised, as Sugato Bose has quoted in another book, that he preferred Mohammedan history. Barring Aurangzeb, he said it was a great age. If there is time, I can read out the passages, Sri Aurobindo's passages on the Mughals, on the great Mughals, whom he appreciates. And because he knew that India will be made with the help of these different kinds of people who will call the country mother. He demanded just one thing, call the country mother. And he never asked anybody to change their religion. Never. He rather said, to do my yoga, you don't have to change your religion. So instead of, from 1921-22 onwards, he started using the word mother instead of Shakti. And even sometimes as a synonym, he used the word force with F capital, or conscious force, which is the mediating force between Allah, the Supreme, and the human individual. In Life Divine, he uses plenty of words, absolute, illimitable, infinite. And as Whitman has also said, Allah, Allah, Allah is all. Allah is everywhere in every object. Allah is the supreme. Allah is, there are two forms of Sri Krishna. One is the incarnation. One is the incarnation, the other is the divine Purushottam, which is synonymous with Allah. So many of my students know this, and it is a good sign that there is a lot of change in the Muslim mentality these days. And Muslim devotees of Sri Aurobindo are expanding in bulk. It's a good sign because they have known this man is not Hindu, as this book has claimed Sri Aurobindo is a Hindu and he is responsible for the RSS and the Hindu Mahasabha movements. This man has said, and I just laughed, what can I do? But this comes from those left thinkers. Bipan Chandra is there, Chatterjee is there, Dipesh Chakraborty is there, Rumila Thapar is there. And this is, Sri Aurobindo uses a very significant word in Kolkata, which every historian has missed. Towards the close of the Bonde Mataram and Karma Yogin articles, 1907 onwards, he used the word new nationalism, N capital in both, new nationalism, both in capital. And this new nationalism is related to humanism. So when Chittaranjan Das said, it was wonderfully prophetic. Chittaranjan Das was a great leader, but his personal life, he was not quite an ideal person. But his politics, his patriotism, you can't deny that. And it comes in great poetry long after this controversy is hushed into silence, long after he is dead and gone. He will be remembered as a poet of patriotism, as a prophet of nationalism, as a lover of humanity. His words will be echoed not just in India, but across the nations, across the lands, across the distant seas. Wonderful poetry and exact. So there is a link between all the three: poet of patriotism, prophet of nationalism, which is a new concept of nationalism. You have to understand this, which all the left historians have missed, either deliberately or due to lack of intuitive knowledge, because they are great intellectuals. I can't say they are not intellectuals. They are great intellectuals. They are cerebral thinkers. But beyond the intellect, there is another thing called intuition and a better rationality, a higher rationality. With that, you will know that this nationalism, or what he calls new nationalism, is something else, which Chittaranjan Das had indicated in the Bohm trial case, at the end of the Bohm trial case. And prophet of nationalism, poet of patriotism, lover of humanity are related terms. Sri Aurobindo was a favorite of many Muslims who understood what he was meaning, but it was a great mass of ignorance. Even now, it's a great blank ignorance. We have to educate a lot. That please change your mentality. We are not against you. Unfortunately, the backlash has come because of the worldwide terror in the name of Islam. And naturally, in India, there is a reaction against it. And it's not the time to speak of Sri Aurobindo, because Sri Aurobindo speaks of eternal religion, which is spirituality. And they have hijacked the phrase. And it is 10,000 years old. 10,000 years old, Aryan civilization, which Sri Aurobindo interprets for us. There is no good interpretation of the Vedas. I tell you, the Bengali books are unreadable. You come to aesthetics, there is no good Bengali book on Anandabardhan and Abhinava Gupta, except for an introduction by Subodh Gupta. It's horrible. Sri Aurobindo interprets Anandabardhan's poetics in one chapter. It is entitled The Essence of Poetry in the Future Poetry. So this is his resistance. And when it comes to literature, he wrote a revised history of English poetry. Revised because, why revised? Because 70% was traditional, 30% were original. Like we have read from our childhood, from our boyhood, that Keats was a poet of beauty. What kind of beauty? We only know about sensuous beauty. Sri Aurobindo makes a gradation of Keats's beauty. Sensuous beauty, imaginative beauty, intellectual beauty, intuitive beauty, ideal or divine beauty. And like in Blake, he is traditional. What T.S. Eliot says in selected essays on Blake, he is echoing that. Eliot says, there is no conceptual framework of tradition behind Blake, in his short essay on Blake in selected essays. And Sri Aurobindo says, Blake cannot translate his experience into our comprehension. So many of the things are traditional, but he suddenly takes a leap. That is the yogic leap. And you have to understand, we have to understand this, that he is not an ordinary person. He is seeing. When he said, I'm not a philosopher, he said, most of my writings are inspired without any secretarial assistance, without any library assistance. I wrote from my memory, from my experience. And he couldn't revise all the books. 26 times he tried to revise the future poetry, and he failed each time. So many people in India think the future poetry is Sri Aurobindo's manifesto, Sri Aurobindo's poetic manifesto. It's wrong. Sri Aurobindo could not say what he had to say. R.Y. Deshpande, somebody has said, there is none like me. There are many good scholars of Sri Aurobindo in India, and I know people much better than me. R.Y. Deshpande is there. So it's not right to claim that. There are others who know better than me. And they have said, Deshpande has told me for the first time that no, Gautam, Sri Aurobindo is not final in the future poetry. He's struggling to express his view of mantra as poetry, or poetry as mantra. It comes out clear only in his letters to K.D. Setna, his Parsi disciple. His Parsi disciple, who also came to Shantiniketan, to Rabindranath, and he then left Rabindranath and went to Pondicherry, settled down there. And most of Sri Aurobindo's letters on his aesthetics are written to Setna. Very few to Dilip Kumar Roy, but mostly to Setna. And together, if you take the future poetry with the letters, then it becomes a new theory of poetry. And remember, Eliot was writing his revolutionary theory of tradition and individual talent in 1919, in a lonely corner of the globe from 1917 to 1920. A lone person, a recluse, is giving an alternative theory of poetry. Poetry as not an escape from emotion, but which expresses and which comes out from the fountainhead of the spirit. And even lyric, even epic will turn lyric in future. Even drama will be lyrical in future. These are the ideas with which he proved to the West that, well, see, India has so many things and I'm an Indian. So at the core of his heart, he was an Indian, not offending others. He wanted to say what India has. In the foundations of Indian culture, one by one, he takes up India's polity, India's architecture, the Persian, Indo-Persian architecture, the Buddhist paintings, and everywhere he asserts the Indianness. And of course, there is no greater event after Shakespeare in the language. Let me speak in Bengali. ইংরেজি ভাষা নিয়ে যা খুশি তাই করেছেন। There is no greater event after Shakespeare in the language. That is why so many people are being drawn to him these days. And Christians, Punjabis, Sikhs, and Muslims, they are coming to Sri Aurobindo because here you have an integral stuff. And he says that nationalism will stay. And you will remember that in the very first chapter, Benedict Anderson has said that nationalism it's not going to go very soon. For a different reason. Nationalism is not going to go soon. It will stay. Sri Aurobindo says it will stay because humanity is not yet ready to discard nationalism. And there he comes to his theory of evolution. Because human evolution is at a stage when it is not the stage to discard nationalism. Nationalism will stay. And in Kolkata, he had said that nationalism is the God. It is the voice of God that speaks to nationalism. Nationalism cannot die. Because in the ideal of human unity, he said, unity will be there. This book can be compared with Rabindranath's The Religion of Man. There also Rabindranath traces on the Upanishads, basically the traces on Isha Upanishad and other Upanishads. So because these are not religious texts, but Sri Aurobindo's Gita, Veda are totally taken out from the clutches of the Hindus, Orthodox Hindus. No, these are not your text. Every Muslim, every Sikh, every Christian has a right to it because it speaks of the transformation of human nature, the lower vital, the physical, which will be changed by our true being, which is the psychic being. And when the psychic transformation comes, it will press us towards the spiritual plane, and from the spiritual to the supermind, where we have the new species. So nationalism is extremely important. And in 1919, Rabindranath Tagore totally changed his view of nationalism. Even in 1917, he said to his biographer Kripalani, I won't write on politics again. See in Kripalani's book, Tagore speaking to Kripalani, I won't write on politics again, because he felt he was wrong. And that is why Tagore was desperate in meeting Sri Aurobindo in 1928. He was in a very bad health, and he took plenty of labor to come down and to meet Sri Aurobindo only for 15 minutes, because Sri Aurobindo even refused Gandhi, but he gave time for Tagore, because both Tagore and Sri Aurobindo had a mutual respect for each other. Sri Aurobindo considers Tagore one of the three leading pioneers of mantrik poetry in English literature. And we know what Tagore has said on Sri Aurobindo. And even Sri Aurobindo considers Tagore a great sadhak, a wayfarer towards the same goal as ours in his own way. So both his sadhana and his poetry are highlighted by Sri Aurobindo. And perhaps those few words are the best things that I have seen on Rabindra Sangeet and Tagore's poetry. I've tried to write a bit on that. But so this nationalism is not a small thing. It has a link with the lover of humanity, with a widening. Three things happening in Sri Aurobindo's yoga at the same time. And all are welcome for that. A widening of consciousness, a deepening of consciousness, and a heightening of consciousness. All these three are found in Whitman's poetry. And I have read a little of Whitman because of my wife's interest in it. But he goes well with Sri Aurobindo, exactly. When Subramania Swami asked Sri Aurobindo in Pondicherry what to do to write good poetry, Sri Aurobindo said, read Walt Whitman. So this is a nationalist who is only nationalist by courtesy. And there is no difference between Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo. I have deconstructed the total misconception. And maybe some political reasons may be there because the Marxists were backing, they were appeasing the Muslims. And that has caused only harm. Appeasing the Muslims. Muslims must be one with us. They are Indians. We love them. Some of us are very close to us. Why differentiate with them? No difference. But these Marxist historians, they have created their own narrative. And they have sidelined totally Sri Aurobindo to occupy the scene. Now, if a political party hijacked Aurobindo, is it their fault? But maybe after this period is over, we can review Sri Aurobindo in a better light. So this was my speech today. I was trying to link Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo. They are no two different people. The difference is only in the language, which suddenly changed surprisingly after 1914. And it's a miraculous change. And of course, the expressive function is much better. Sometimes it looks like he is speaking like a fanatic in Kolkata, but actually he's not a fanatic. He's not an extremist. He's trying to defend himself. No, I'm not an extremist. Don't call me an extremist. I'm trying to rebuild. I'm constructive. But who listens? So this is what I had to say today. In case you have questions, queries, I will answer.
Yes, sir. Such an insightful speech, sir. It's very nice. And we are so much immersed that we are just speechless.
I'm
But we
prepared
do
to
have,
answer questions.
yes, sir, there are a few questions we'll be addressing. Sir, here Animesh Bagh has one question. Thank you, Gautam Da, for this insightful talk. Just one thing. How would you situate Aurobindo's prison experience in 1908, which he
Do you have
captured?
any question?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can't hear you. I'm
Okay.
going out and coming back again.
Okay, sir.
Please
Yeah.
repeat. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So I'm repeating the question. Thank you, Gautam Da, for this insightful talk. Just one thing. How would you situate Aurobindo's prison experience in 1908, which he captured in his Tales of Prison Life in relation to his great transformation and worldview?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you-
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that was a turning point. 1909 is a turning point in Sri Aurobindo's spiritual career, because many things, his old ideas broke down, and because he had direct experience for the first time. Not that he was merged with Sri Krishna, but he had the vision of Sri Krishna then. And you have to believe. And many have criticized Uttarpada's speech because he is repeatedly speaking on Sanatan Dharma and others. India has to rise. And almost all the leftists have criticized that. But this is the turning point in his history because he gets a direct guidance, no other than Vivekananda. Because Vivekananda was with him for 14 days and people asked him, how could you believe it was Vivekananda? Did you see him? Sri Aurobindo said, if I saw him, I wouldn't have believed because seeing is illusion. But what he said in my ear was a direct guidance towards the supramental path. Because Vivekananda died only at age 39, he could not progress much. But whatever he learned, Sri Aurobindo, I am quoting Sri Aurobindo, the spirit stayed with me for 14 days and he put everything into my ears that he knew. And after that, it fell silent. So that was the turning point.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Shutapa Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Dr. Kanailal Bhattacharya College has one question. Thank you very much, Professor Ghoshal, for such an insightful analysis of Sri Aurobindo. Could you kindly throw some light on Aurobindo's views on women?
In War and Self-Determination, Sri Aurobindo came out clearly with the idea that children and women are not patriarchal property. We have no right to even instruct them. They must develop according to their own nature. And you may have some suggestions at best, but you have no right to interfere or intervene in the development. The old patriarchal idea of the son as the paternal property, the woman as the paternal property of man has to be abolished now. He said this in War and Self-Determination. He wrote it between 1914 and 1921.
Thank you, sir. So, Ardent Orunabho, he's writing, Gautam, the fantastic speech as ever. In the speech, you mentioned that two great men shaped Indian mind, Tagore and Sri Aurobindo. My question is, whether or not understood or even read properly, Tagore is always a popular figure among the Bengalis and among Indians as well. However, the image of Sri Aurobindo does not enjoy this popularity until recently. What do you think is the reason behind this? Is it only due to the leftist representation of the two figures, or is there other reason?
Not even now. Sri Aurobindo is still only in the last 5 years. I have been on Facebook for the last 5 years. There is a change recently, a little of change. But Sri Aurobindo himself was responsible because he did not like any kind of publicity. He said things will come out in a natural course. When Rabindranath asked him, I am going to Europe, Europe is taking me so enthusiastically, why don't you come to Europe with me? Then Sri Aurobindo said, Europe will come to me if she needs it. And after that, Tagore wrote that wonderful essay, Aurobindo Ghosh in Bengali. বহুদিন স্বাদ ছিল অরবিন্দ ঘোষকে দেখবো আজ দেখলাম বুঝলাম ইনি আত্মাকে জেনেছেন. And because it was obvious for Tagore, he was also an advanced sadhak, so he could know what Sri Aurobindo was. And it will be a slow process. If he got the Nobel Prize, it's such a great light, Sri Aurobindo is such a great light, people were not in a position to receive it. This is my intuition. That if he got the Nobel Prize in 1943 or 1950, it would not have been received it would be a chaos, because this light will gradually, with the progressive light of human evolution, it will come out slowly. Sri Aurobindo is for the future.
Exactly, sir. Sir, another question by Shuprabhat Chatterjee. Sir, how is a belief in nationalism different from religious belief?
Suprabhat, this is not religion. What Sri Aurobindo speaks is spiritual, it is not religion. He has spoken in the human cycle of two kinds of religion. One is religionism and one is religion. The true essence of religion is spirituality. And what Sri Aurobindo is speaking, even in Kolkata, it might look a bit enthusiastic. They called it fanatic, but even that argument is a spiritual argument in favor of Sanatan Dharma is not religion. Sanatan Dharma is nobody's property. It is totally hijacked by some political parties. It is nobody's property. Nobody knows what it is. And even the historians like A.L. Basam, they think it is 3,005 years old. Sri Aurobindo says it is 10,000 years old. Now the recent excavations indicate that there were civilizations, Asian civilizations, even before 10,000 years. So it was spiritual, absolutely.
Okay, sir. Madhumita Datta, as a question. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful talk. With this leftist agenda against both Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo, and with the current mindset, how can we disseminate his ideas in these present times?
Oh, this Madhumita must be the one who worked under me for his dissertation, Savitri.
Yes,
And
sir. Good evening, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. So it will take some time, Madhumita. You are doing good work, and Suprabhat has started. Rudrashis is also doing good work. There are quite a few around now, and I hope very soon things will change. It has already changed a lot. Your daughter is there on Facebook. She can see it, that there is a change. And there was a great response this 15th August. Even last 15th August, it was only India's freedom. But this 15th August, I saw people are speaking of Sri Aurobindo on 15th August. So I think, Madhumita, things are improving, and thanks to your efforts, you are doing good work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir Mridula Ghosh has a question. Thanks a lot for the excellent speech. Would you please comment on the following? Leftist politicians were greatly influenced by the World Communist Movement, which endorsed brutal violence and dehumanized politics in general. Had they turned themselves towards India more, their views will not be colonized by the foreign leftists.
This is a good question, though framed slightly obscurely, but this is a good question I can get. The point is, you have to develop your country as per your heritage. You can take a few of Marxist points, but you can't take the whole of Marxism. Like the Marx has said, the poor will be poorer. This hasn't happened. So some of the Marxist ideas may be taken. Sri Aurobindo himself has accommodated quite a few Marxian points in the human cycle. Quite a few. Sri Aurobindo has assimilated quite a few Marxian thoughts in the human cycle, and which Adorno has said about mass culture. Sri Aurobindo has also said about that mass culture is not culture. And this kind of foreign ideology won't suit India. And there is no feeling for the country unless you have a love for your country, for your motherland. Both Muslims, Sikhs, whoever is in India, there cannot be any improvement because people will continue to be dishonest, people will continue to be corrupt. No, there is one Karan Singh in the parliament who was good. There was one Manohar Parrikar in BJP who was, there was one Buddhadev Bhattacharya in CPM who had a different consciousness, a slightly higher consciousness. So these people are too less, and actually you have to accommodate, you have to adjust with native. Without native stuff, you also cannot create. In literature also, in politics, if you don't give dhyan to the native stuff, you cannot create and you cannot make a better nation.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Neha Praveen has a question. Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful and informative speech. I'm only asking you one informative thing. Why did Aurobindo Ghosh leave politics?
So this I have already said, that Sri Aurobindo was not detached from politics. The question, the word leaving does not apply to him because he shifted his work from Kolkata to Pondicherry because it was not suitable in Kolkata. He understood that Sumit spoke of it in a not very favorable way. But Sri Aurobindo shifted because he thought that in this way I cannot do much. So let me shift my political agenda elsewhere with the power of yoga and with a different kind of strategy. There is no question of leaving. I have said that Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo are not two different men, except for the change of language.
Okay, sir. Sir, Kavita Gopalakrishnan has a question. Sir, could you throw some more light on how Aurobindo's integral education that envisions to enhance harmony, knowledge, and will power in a human being?
That is extremely urgent now, because without this fivefold education, physical, vital, mental, psychic, spiritual, these make integral education or fivefold education. So without this training from the nursery class, we won't be able to live the life properly. We will always be quarreling. We cannot adjust with other. The whole idea is to adjust with another individual. We are failing there. Human beings live like strangers because they don't have integral education. With integral education, human beings will be able to know each other much better. So that is a must, and it has started, but it should be more in West Bengal. In Odisha, it has spread a lot. In Gujarat, it has spread a lot, but in West Bengal, because of this intellectuality which Sri Aurobindo criticizes, because this intellectual education is wonderful thing, it's a wonderful thing, but it blocks certain other things which are greater things, intuition, higher reason. And so you think, what he is speaking of yogic stuff. Sri Aurobindo was not Ramdev or Sri Ravi Shankar or Sadhguru. He was different. Many of the ideas are being taken by these so-called Babas, but he was a different thing. So Sri Aurobindo must spread, and integral education must spread so that people can be harmonized. The whole idea is to bring about harmony on earth. Sri Aurobindo says in the first chapter of the Life Divine, all problems of existence are essentially problems of harmony. So this problem has to be solved through integral education.
Sir, our principal, sir, has a question. Excellent talk, Gautam Da. You hinted at canon formation of universities. How can we change the mindset of academic administrators?
Now this will change because, sometimes the barbarians do great works. Sri Aurobindo has said at many places, many good things are done by the barbarians. You think this man is a barbarian as a leader. but many barbarians do many good things. So it will come, it is called by Sri Aurobindo play of forces. And by a strange play of forces, Sri Aurobindo will be in, because only this time I have seen political leaders acknowledging his contribution. I didn't listen to this before. And this is very strange to me that people used to speak of Vivekananda only. And but it is very difficult to distort him, because you can't put him in the Hindutva line. It is difficult, but let them learn slowly through their faults, through their errors.
Okay, thank you, sir. Himadri Shekhar Datta has a question. Sir, our Hindi culture and literature has been using the name Arvind Ghosh at large. How to bring about a change in this?
So even Narendra Modi said last year, Arvind ji. I was on Twitter, Narendra Modi ji said last year, Arvind ji. And my friend, my classmate, he said, Gautam, I am leaving Twitter after this. After hearing Arvind ji, I am leaving Twitter. I won't be back in Twitter again. So this will change slowly. This will go in course. It's a slow thing, because human evolution is not fast. Sometimes there is a backstep in evolution, which Sri Aurobindo calls barbaric relapse. So sometimes there is a barbaric relapse, then once again a forward movement. Evolution moves like that. And interestingly, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy goes well with Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi of the 12th century mystic. The same theory of evolution. And there is a book, not very well written, but many books are coming comparing the two. Jalaluddin Rumi is known to be the only person who has interpreted the Quran perfectly. And Rumi is now a big hit in the Western world. More than Sri Aurobindo, Rumi is a big hit now.
So one last question by Dr. Devapriya Goswami. An enlightening session, Gautamda. Would you briefly comment on the politics of canon formation in post-independence Indian literary milieu that cornered him as a poet?
Yeah, that is her own thesis. She knows it better. That she wrote in detail how it is and how people have displaced him to occupy the position with their very inferior stuff. Modern Indian poetry in English is awfully low in standard, and Sri Aurobindo was sidelined from 1949 just to make their own space. And fortunately, P. Lal was the first to come back to Sri Aurobindo after being a great critic of Sri Aurobindo. And Ananda once said to me, Baba kintu ekhon Sri Aurobindor bhakto. So Baba, P. Lal started the movement, and now before his departure, P. Lal was reading Sri Aurobindo and he was quoting, interpreting Sri Aurobindo, and he was using Sri Aurobindo's theory of translation. There are many aspects of Sri Aurobindo's theory of translation is another aspect which P. Lal has practiced. And so Devapriya knows that it will be difficult, because people like Arvinda Mehratra and others from Maharashtra, they are trying to claim that there are groups and Sri Aurobindo is, but things are better. People have started acknowledging. And unlike Pritish Nandi's famous comment, gone are the days of Sarojini and Sri Aurobindo, nobody considers them writers. That was Pritish Nandi. But nobody is going to be serious about those comments now.
Thank you so much, sir. Even the question answer session is also so much enlightening. Thank you so much. Now, I request our faculty, Dr. Aniket Mohapatra, to deliver the vote of thanks.
ধন্যবাদ। The nationalism of Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Aurobindo reconstructing the left ideologue এই শীর্ষক আলোচনা চক্র তথা ওয়েবিনারের একেবারে অন্তিম লগ্নে আমরা উপনীত হয়েছি। প্রথমেই ধন্যবাদ আজকের প্রধান বক্তা ডক্টর গৌতম ঘোষালকে। আপনার অভিমত, সমীক্ষা, বিচার ও বিশ্লেষণে আমরা ঋদ্ধ হলাম স্যার। ধন্যবাদ জ্ঞাপন করতে চাই নিউ আলিপুর কলেজের প্রিন্সিপাল ডক্টর জয়দীপ ষড়ঙ্গীকে। ধন্যবাদ জানাই ডক্টর তিলক চ্যাটার্জিকে, যিনি বঙ্কিম সর্দার কলেজের প্রিন্সিপাল, এবং ডক্টর রামকৃষ্ণ প্রসাদ চক্রবর্তীকে, যিনি কে দাস কলেজের প্রিন্সিপাল। নিউ আলিপুর কলেজের ভাইস প্রিন্সিপাল অধ্যাপক দিবেশ বেরাকে ধন্যবাদ। ধন্যবাদ জ্ঞাপন করি নিউ আলিপুর কলেজের IQS এর কোঅর্ডিনেটর ডক্টর সাম্যব্রত দাসকে। আমরা কৃতজ্ঞ আপনাদের এই উপস্থিতির জন্য। ধন্যবাদ টেকনিক্যাল সাপোর্ট দিয়ে যারা অনুষ্ঠানটিকে সর্বাঙ্গ সুন্দর করে তুলেন অধ্যাপক ভিক্টর মুখার্জি এবং অধ্যাপক গোবিন্দলাল মণ্ডলকে। ধন্যবাদ অধ্যাপক অদিতি রুদ্রকে, যার সঞ্চালনায় অনুষ্ঠানটি উপস্থাপিত হলো। সেই সঙ্গে ধন্যবাদ সমস্ত জিজ্ঞাসু এবং অংশগ্রহণকারী তথা শ্রোতা দর্শকদের, যারা ছাড়া আমরা অসম্পূর্ণ। আবার সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ। নমস্কার, শুভরাত্রি।
Thank you, Gautam da. Thank you. Wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jaydeep.
so
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashadharan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Really.
Ashadharan, pure learning. Submission to your learning. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a great event coming up of 25th. That will be Bill Ashcroft in conversation with the with faculty of the college. So we're looking forward. Thank you everybody for participation and active involvement. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gautam da.
Thank you.
Thank you.